Sexy butt. It's time to try and fit this exhaust pipe. I want it in place just because, why not? Got nothing else to do, and I've got this exhaust sitting out beside the house, so I need to put it up. So I've just quickly put the back end. This exhaust is being split in two, so you can kind of, you know, separate it and get it over the wheel arch. So I've just rested it in place there, and I've just bolted it back to its position. So this is not the original exhaust. This has been put on the car, I would guess probably 20 years ago. You can see the amount of surface rust that's on these parts. What I'm going to try and attempt today is get it bolted back up to the dump pipe of the turbos. So it's a 2C12 turbos going into a flange that this downpipe bolts into. I do wish that when they built this exhaust system that front piece was maybe only a foot or two long. It would have made it a lot easier to fit up, but for some reason it's freaking 7 foot long and it's a pain in the ass to try and position. So I've mounted this here. I'm going to then attach it via 1 or 2 screws or bolts where it goes, and that'll hang this end up into a relative correct position. There's still a lot of mounting points I have to actually install or fabricate. But let's see if we can get this thing fitted. At least when I'll have an idea of how it's going to sit. And also, once it fits in place, and I know that it does fit, I'm mainly concerned about bolting up the flange to the dump pipe to the exhaust outlet from the turbos. I want to make sure that fits right. Once it does, I'm going to take it all back down again. I'm going to hit the whole thing with a strip disc and try and see what damage is done. There's probably going to be holes all through this old exhaust, but it might be repairable. We'll find out. It's got a cat in it, or at least another muffler in the middle. It must have been pretty droney, given that it is looks like a 3-inch all the way through. So it's a big enough exhaust. It'll be interesting to see what this thing sounds like. But any hooties, let's get to work. Things first, get rid of these because, well, I don't need to be there. That lets me access the exhaust flange. Yeah, they're so shiny. This is the piece of dump pipe that came off the new engine that I'm actually going to be using. It's a 2.5 inch, and I'm actually going to be bolting on the original, well, the 20-year-old piece, just because it actually fits past the W50 gearbox, the adapter plate, and the clutch slave cylinder. This one does not fit because it did not have this gearbox set up on it before. So I'm happy I've still kept this exhaust. I was considering throwing it out because it was rusty and horrible, but I'm happy I've still got it. So let's get this done. So that's going to hold in place for me. It doesn't need to be tight. I'm happy with a little bit of movement just because I can work it out. That looks like a mount point for rubbers that'll hang over this loop here, which is great. Now to go to the front and see if I can mount up the front of the exhaust to the downpipe flange. There's literally no way of resting this camera in place to record it, so I'm just going to show you what's going on. That has to attach to that, which is the exhaust outlet from the turbos. So wish me luck. It's going to be a tight fit. One of these here, so this little wall of the exhaust manifold is really close to that, so I've got to try and wedge it in there in a way that allows me to fit. I might get some cleaner onto that oxygen sensor there and just give it a quick clean up before we continue on. But I'll try and rest this in a way that you guys can see. Wish me luck. Well, it's really close, except slightly twisted. So I think I'm going to have to undo the bolts back down there and just work out a way of wiggling this on first, because this ain't going on while it's bolted up. Nothing a bucket can't fix, hey? Woohoo! I got it! Alrighty. Well, I'm not going to do the whole thing up, just because I know it fits. I don't need to go to all my effort attaching this end up, which is actually a pain in the ass doing it by yourself and when it's not up in the air. That went on fine. Well, not fine, but it's on. I thought I was going to have to disassemble the steering rack here so I can actually maneuver that into place, but it did pop in, which is wonderful. This little bracket that's hanging off the, oh, where is it? That little bracket there, which is in the way of the clutch. I'm going to cut that off because it's not needed. And it's actually interfering with me bolting it up, so that's going to be removed. Down there, everything else looks like it's fine, everything's in place, so I'm going to take this all off again. I'm going to hit the wire brush on it and get it back to metal. Well, I'm going to continue doing this. My battery power is pretty low, and you can basically see what I'm going to do before I do the next step. I will turn the video back on and continue, which is basically going to be rust conversion over what's left on the pipe, and that will turn any bits of surface rust that I've missed into a black metal, and it'll be safe and will no longer rust. I'm hoping that the inside of this pipe isn't too bad, but that's something we'll only figure out, you know, later on down the track if it blows a hole in the exhaust or something. But I'm actually pretty happy with this, the way it's coming out. So I think this is definitely going to be used. I just hope it's not too droney when it's running, but again, we'll find out later. So yeah. Alrighty, so it's been sanded down okay. All the surface rust has come off it. Minimal holes, which is really good. Only on the bottom side of the exhaust. There's one there and a couple through this bottom plate, and that's it. So, because it's on the base, when this is on a hoist up in the air, I'm going to send it to an exhaust shop, and I'm just going to tell them to, I don't know, do whatever they need to do to fix this. It'll be accessible for them, and just kind of fill up the holes. If they say I need a new exhaust, then so be it, but I think this will work. Got me applicator. Alright, I'll let that dry for 10 or 20 minutes. I'll come back over it with some water and wax and grease remover, and then do the next step. So that's been rust converted, or sanded down, rust converted, wiped down, and just a little bit of cover on it to stop it from rusting. Now it's time to go get some of this stuff. Oh yeah, because you can read that absolutely perfectly. Yeah, VHT high temperature flame proof header paint. So I'm going to go get some of that in black, and this is going to get sprayed. Alright, so I'm just going to try and tack up some of these really small holes, because I think we can just make a bead of weld around them and fill them. I'll give it a go. I gotta play with my settings on the welder, and if I do blow a big hole in this, then I'll continue doing the patch method that I said I was going to do at the beginning. But we'll try and fix them up just with some tack welds first. Right, so we missed the last little bit of that welding, but not that it matters. My welder had an issue with the wire feed, so I had to fix that. Move that out of the way. So basically, this is really thin, and it's a real pain to try and spot weld this. But I managed to get it done. I had to create a little loop of weld around the hole, then basically had to fill that in with every little tiny hole that I had. So basically that's pretty good. I'm happy with that as far as most of the holes being sorted. I'm just going to scuff over these with a grinder probably, and that can be it. This is a 22-year-old exhaust, so I'm not too fussed about it looking exceptional. One day I will get a new one on anyway, so scuff this up, go to the shop, get some paint. So I got what I needed from Supercheap. Some of that for the exhaust, but I'm devastated. I'm actually a little bit devastated. The Moustache Barbershop air freshener for the cars that Supercheap used to sell had been discontinued. There's none in this Supercheap, there's none in the other Supercheap. They're no more, they're gone. So I was on a bit of a mission to find one, and I don't think it's going to happen, so we'll have to figure something else out. Anyway, back to the exhaust. There we have a full black exhaust in some heat-proof paint. I'm just going to let that kind of set for about 20 minutes. I'm going to go inside, make myself a glass of water, and when I come back I will try and fit it back into the car. Well, it's done. It's on. And it's in place. And it's hanging and it's solid, which is great. The mounts are in at the end. It comes close to the diff there, but it does clear it, which is wonderfulness. Yeah, stoked. Stoked. Once the car's all back together and everything and the fuel tank's in, it's got some fuel, this diff will actually go up with the suspension. Right now it's actually pretty much hanging, although it's being held up by the diff itself. There's hardly any weight in the car right now, and it's right at the very, very, very top of the suspension bolt, so I know it's got a long way to sit. So yeah, on top of that, the car's going to get lowered a little bit, so that will take this rear, can't even think right now, the tail shaft, it will go up higher and actually clear the exhaust even more, so I'm probably expecting about 1 inch of clearance. You can see the tunnel right down there, how much clearance I actually have to go, so looking forward to that. Let's go have a look at what the tip looks like. There we have the tailpipe. I think it suits the car, just one little tiny bit sticking out the rear end. Once the number plate's in place, the fuel tank's in, and the little red toe bolts, toe nut thingy bobs are back in, it'll look sweet. But yeah, nice black exhaust there, got it mounted into position. It's really nice and solid, which I'm pretty happy about, and it definitely has plenty of clearance of my rear diff, so that'll sit right up there. I'm pretty happy. I think that's about it. That's all I'm going to do today. Well, yesterday and today. I'm going to sit down in the air conditioning and drink some water. We'll see what we do next. I'm really procrastinating on the wiring, by the way. Don't want to do it.